All right, you're good to go.
All right, we're on? Okay. For the audience that doesn't know you, feel free to introduce yourself.
All right. Well, John Rondi. I am the son of John Rondi, Sr., a.k.a. Johnny Drinks. I am the cameraman for the most part. But, yeah, so we started the page Johnny Drinks about 5 years ago, February 2020, pre-COVID. We're not bartenders. My dad was making a drink before we went out to eat. I said, let me try this app called TikTok out and see what I can make of it. I posted the video. First video does really well. This was during a time that everybody was kind of going super viral. It was not like the early stages, but it was kind of like those Vine days where you got these mega superstars that were blown up overnight over 6-second videos. So
D'Amelios.
Right, exactly. So like for us, we weren't in that era of like the D'Amelios, but we started posting without really realizing what we were doing, and then quarantine hits. We have nothing else to do, so we're like, why not just keep making these silly cocktail videos? I think people think we're some sort of bartenders. So we kept making drinks, realized quickly that it was less about the drinks, more about the father and son dynamic, and we received a ton of just feedback via comments like, I can't believe how cool the dad is, I can't believe how great their relationship is, and you start to really take a step back, and you're like, first of all, wow, I have it really, really well, and second of all, you're having such an impact on people that maybe don't have that relationship, whether it's a dad that just can't seem to figure it out with his son, or vice versa, or maybe somebody lost their dad or their son, and so we were filling a void, which felt really great. And then when 2021 hit, we realized that like this was getting pretty big when we were going out and people were asking for pictures. Like, so mind you, we just went 8 months of not seeing anybody, and now we're at the bar and people are asking for our autographs. We're like, what are you talking about? Why do you care about taking a picture with us or whatever it may be? And so it was a really cool experience, but we knew we had something, or at least I did, because I had a tech startup out of college. And so at that point, I was on the other side of things. I was paying these meme pages to post and sponsor an ad for what we were trying to do. And I remember asking the questions like, hey, how much for a post? And they'd be like, this much money. And I would pause and be like, you can make this much fucking money posting an ad for something random like that. It'll be gone in a day. And so I was always intrigued by the space, never knew how I could start a page. And then lo and behold, as soon as it started taking off, I was like, oh, this is what I want to do. So within, like I said, that 8-month period, I stopped, froze operations with the tech startup, doubled down on this, and here we are today.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, with that being said, so we had a very long conversation before the podcast even started. One of those stories, because you have multiple great interviews with 3 individuals I'm pretty sure everybody here has heard of. Dylan Dennis, Dana White, and Bo Nickel. Now, Dylan Dennis and Dana White especially, and hopefully Bo Nickel. How did you meet Dana White? Because that's one of your one of your more popular videos.
Yeah. And honestly, everybody has like an inflection point, I think, of like their creator journey. And I feel like the UFC and Dana White was that for us, right? Like we were doing like celebrity drink reviews at the time. And so we had a bottle of Hallerhead, which was Dana White's bourbon. We reviewed it not organically, like we had no clue who he was at this point or didn't know him personally. Reviewed it, we liked it, we posted the video, didn't think twice. They then took the video and posted it on the Hallerhead page. And I was telling you, like, if it was a random brand, I'd be like, hey, you can't just take our fucking content and post it. Right. But we were huge fans, and I was like, that's awesome. I reached out and was like, hey, long shot, but what if we made some content with Dana? And didn't think anything. They reached back out and were like, we'd love to do that. We talked to his right-hand man, Eric Yee at the time, had like a video call with him. And we were spitballing all these different ideas. And I felt the conversation going in a good direction, but I also felt the conversation going in a way that a lot of conversations go when it comes to this sort of stuff is like, here's an idea, and then here's an idea, and then another one, and you're really excited for the hour. And then you leave the phone call, you're like, wait, what the fuck did we do? Like, we didn't get anywhere, right? So I finally said, like, hey, I love all these ideas, but I want to lock in on one. I want to get out to Vegas. I want to make content with and for Dana. I want to make him drinks. Can we do that? And he's like, let me talk to him. So they ended up flying us out to Vegas. We did the whole like UFC Apex tour. We made drinks for Dana. We went to the UFC fights, went to the weigh-ins. It was just the most incredible experience, and Dana treats his people super right.
Well, with that being said, Dana. Okay, well, what about the Dylan Dennis interview? Was that?
That's a good one too. So they're not correlated at all.
Okay.
Ironically, like they have nothing to do with each other.
I assumed it was a hookup.
No, because I mean, honestly, I think Dana and Dylan and the UFC are controversial at points, and so Dylan, I think I'd followed him at the time. He reached out to me and said something about buying our bourbon, and I was like, dude, I'll fucking send you a bottle. You don't have to buy it for me or from me, and he bought it anyway, which was incredible. And he was like, oh, let's meet up, or maybe I asked him. He ended up living right across the street from where I was moving, and I was like, dude, I'm gonna be in the area. So this is a pretty funny story that I told with him. So the first night that I was there, he's like, yo, let's meet up. We met up at like a local bar in Hoboken. And again, mind you, my page is called Johnny Drinks. I'm not like an abusive drinker. I'm not an alcoholic.
Right.
I don't drink every day. But he didn't know that. And I think maybe it was a test, right? So I get to the bar. I meet him for the first time. Cool dude. He's like, we're going to Bounce later, which is in the city. He's like, you're coming with me. And Bounce is like a sports bar, but at the time, like 2 years ago, it was popping. Like it was a really cool spot to be, late night or whatever. So I was like, okay. It was like a Sunday. Mm-hmm. And I was like, all right, yeah, fuck it. We end up going, we get hammered. So now I realize like what he's trying to do. He's trying to like play this game of who can drink more. And we're both ripping tequila shots, and it's going until it doesn't. And now I'm blacked out at the bar. We go to a different bar. I think we're at like somewhere nowhere at this point. We end up back at his apartment. And at like 5 in the morning, I wake up and I thought my appendix bursted. Like I was in so much pain, and he was in his room. I'm on his couch, and I'm like, what the fuck do I do? And I call the ambulance. And I'm like, hey, I don't know what's going on. I think my appendix bursted. I need to get to the hospital. They pick me up. This is, again, you have to like wear a mask. They were pretty low on staff. I'm sitting in the fucking waiting room. I was like, is anybody gonna help me? I was like, I'm dying over here. And they're like, dude, shut up. Like, we're not, you can wait your turn like everybody else does. Throw me in a room, put an IV in me, let me throw up all night. They're like, you just were dehydrated and needed some IV. So I woke up, I was fine. I call him, and he's like, where are you? I was like, I'm in the fucking hospital, dude. He's like, what happened? I told him. He's like, oh, man, like, do you want to drink? I was like, no, I don't want to drink. What are you talking about? So that was an interesting way to meet the kid. But then we became really tight because it was shortly after he announced the fight with Logan. So we started training at the same jiu-jitsu gym together. Like, he introduced me to a couple of guys. And so we became really tight. He wasn't drinking. I was kind of supporting that during the week. On the weekends, we'd just chill out. We went out to the UK together. And, so I was just with him 2 days ago, actually. Yeah,
that's
good
an
dude.
Interesting one. Yeah, no, I mean, well, how do they know that your appendix didn't burst? Like,
I told them that, and I think they were like, they might have felt it. They're like, you're fucking fine, man. And it went away as soon as they started putting an IV in me.
okay.
I don't know if they pumped my stomach, but
Well, you probably remember that.
I would think so. Who knows? But yeah.
Unless you were really that.
I woke up and I was like, whoa, what happened? Like, where am I? And they're like, you're in the hospital. You had a night. They checked my levels. I was fine. So,
okay.
Just a bad night.
Yeah. There was another person, and this is probably the last one when it comes to, like, people that you met, but John Shahidi. So he follows you on Instagram, and for those of you that don't know, John Shahidi is the manager of the Nelk Boys.
John Shahidi is also the man behind a lot of brands. Like, he was behind the Money Team. He was helping Lil Wayne with his brands. Like, he is
Justin Bieber.
He is the man, and like he gets things done like this. And he's like you said, he's behind Nelk Boys. He's behind Happy Dad. I forget how we got connected, but I'm trying to get him on the podcast like yesterday. We've been talking. He did Logan Paul's show, but he's the man, dude. He's out in Orange County right now. I got nothing but love for him. We talk a lot, either on Instagram or through WhatsApp. So I'm waiting to either get out there or have him come over here.
He's down in Jersey?
No, he's not. He's in Orange County, California.
Oh.
But yeah, really, really good guy. So we've talked a couple times about like getting involved with Happy Dad and seeing what we could do, and it's one of those brands. So we reviewed a couple of their flavors, and my dad didn't love the purple grape one, and so he texted me. He was like, I'll hop on the podcast if your dad can give grape a second chance or whatever. And I was like, of course, man, that's an easy one. So
yeah, no, he seems like a good dude.
Yeah,
but like, he seems like the definition of somebody that's like very, very good at like networking. Right?
1000%.
Considering that I was gonna say he got the interview for the Nelk Boys with Trump, but I think that was Dana White.
He definitely contributed though, because he was he's tight with Dana, and I'm sure he helped out like through the entire process. But I mean, and the Nelk Boys obviously are like the epitome of what you want when you're looking at social media content creators and then creating a brand. And he helped a lot with that. You know what I mean? Like, you're probably wrangling fucking cattle with those guys, trying to go crazy, but then also make a ton of money. And I'm sure they contributed to a lot of that success. But he's got to be helping out, just overseeing and management behind the scenes. And I know Kyle is super business oriented, and he's another reason why they're super successful.
You know, when we're talking about like meeting people and that sort of networking space, what's the most interesting fan experience you've had? Because you talked a lot about being recognized on a lot of your videos, where it's like, oh, this is a weird feeling at first. What's the most interesting experience meeting a fan? Like somebody comes up to you, it's like you really remember that experience.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it was probably like I said, the first time we were out in public, we were down in Nashville. And normally what happens is like, listen, I'm not fucking, I'm not Justin Bieber, but like we'll walk around and like once one person recognizes you, and especially when we're together, it's like, okay, that's them. Once one person says it, then like other people feel more comfortable to go and do it. So I remember at this point, we haven't been out, so we're walking down Broadway, and we get the occasional looks at us, and they're like, wait, Johnny Drinks. And it was really funny. Like, my dad was like, oh my God, this guy just, said Johnny Drinks to us. And then another guy did, and another guy did, and now they're asking for pictures. So I think that was like the most shocking one. Whereas now it's like the same, or very similar vibe. But yeah, it was just like a weird, why are you doing this? And then we got back home, and that's when like it really hit me, hey, we got something special here. I'm not going to let this slip. And my dad was pretty much all in at that point. We had a couple conversations about like, all right, if you're going to quit your job for this, we have to be making this much money and we have to be doing these sort of things. And so once we hit those milestones and he realized this wasn't just like a fun little activity we were doing, he committed and he was all in. And there's plenty of times where he's way more committed than I am to the day of filming or whatever it may be,
I mean, you have something now like 1 million subscribers on YouTube, 2.5 on TikTok, million, and then 700-ish thousand on Instagram for the page.
Yeah.
On your profile alone, you have like 30,000. Like you have like a lot of following, right? So, yeah. I mean, how does that how did that feel? Like the growth of that.
Listen, man, it becomes a number because now it's like, nothing beats the feeling of like going viral the first time because you'll never feel that again. Yeah. Because then it becomes like all right, that was our job. We were supposed to go and do that. So I don't look at numbers. Thankfully, I don't look at the numbers the same way because the high is not worth the low. Like when you go viral, yeah, it's great. But then you post again, you don't go viral. Like, oh, I was a flash in the pan.
Chasing that dragon.
Yeah, you're chasing the dragon, man. And it is a fucking drug. And you get very addicted and obsessed and you get very high and then you get very low. And it'll debilitate. I mean, you got creators now that struggle mentally because they're so hyper fixated on a number.
Fame.
Yeah, but like fake fame. You know what I mean? Like people like you because you made a fucking TikTok. Like that's not famous. You know what I mean? So it's hard to really grasp the concept sometimes where what am I really doing? What am I contributing to society if all I'm known for is to make these silly videos? And then if I stop making these videos, is anybody going to care about me? And I think a lot of times what happens is creators, they get famous or known for one thing, but like that's not who they are, so they want to go and try something new and nobody likes that, and then they get this feeling of like, oh, I'm not worth anything except for this fake character I put on. I got to pretend to be something I'm not. And now you deal with like this dilemma of who am I? Right. It's a difficult journey of like, okay, this is work. I'm going to do what I have to do to make sure I get the views and the engagement and make the money. But at the same time, I don't want to lose myself and sacrifice walking in public and now people saying to me, hey, fuck that guy because I'm acting like somebody I'm not,
Well, I think it's a different type of fame. I think it's like a lot more, like you're saying, like kind of like, I think what you're getting is like it's a more artificial type of fame.
It can be. Yeah, I mean, it could be real. Like, again, there's plenty of people that have started on TikTok or Instagram or whatever, these short form platforms, but then have also had an actual impact on society and they've done great things. They've done things that are outside the box and you got to start somewhere, Yeah.
Is Dana the most famous person you've met?
Yeah, I mean, I would say like as far as notoriety, like legitimate like we're talking about legitimate notoriety. Yeah, I mean, there's some savvy businessmen that we've met, but I would say for me personally, Dana was, and again at that point was like the holy shit, we're really doing this for us,
Yeah. No, I hear what you're saying when it comes to like fame.
Yeah.
Right, because I've also interviewed creators and I've asked them like, what's that like, getting famous, or like they're like, it feels very weird at first, it's like not like you don't. Sometimes it's like you don't deserve it. Some people feel that way. Other people, it's more like a, so a lot of people it's very positive. Thankfully, it's very positive for a lot of people. There's a kid actually by the name of Evan Cronin or OK Cron on TikTok.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I just did an interview with him. A
nice.
Very, very humble guy, and I'm like, how do you feel about like people taking photos with you? And he's like, I feel great. Like it's like wonderful feeling.
Fucking love it, dude. Like and I'm not. It doesn't like it's not like it's feeding my ego and I need it, but it's like, dude, people care so much about the content I make that they're coming up to me and saying, hey, like I love your stuff. Like that's such a good feeling for me. It's such a good feeling for them that I'm the same person. So like I would never be a dickhead to somebody trying to take a picture with me, and that's where people I think lose touch of who they are and what they're doing. Like you're gonna snuff somebody for taking a picture of you. Like who do you think you are, man? You know.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a lot of people that haven't been around enough, like people that are like famous that are like kind of care a lot more. I mean, I would ask anybody for a photo. You know, I'd be like, hey, I like your stuff. But I think when you're not used to that, it feels very like cool. Like, wow, this person's so cool, and people kind of fans also lose themselves.
Yeah, they do.
Fans also lose themselves. Like they kind of like overreact. They're like, oh my gosh, this person's so cool, and then like people then get a little bit annoyed, like famous people, because they're just people. So it's like
and there's a level to it, right? Like if again you're on the Justin Bieber level and you can't walk down the street without people fangirling over you, that's a different story. Yeah. But for the, I always say like I feel like we're at the perfect level of whatever you want to call this, fame, right? Because I could live a very normal life. I get the occasional, oh my God, that's you. Like, let's take a picture. I love your stuff, but it's never overbearing. There are perks of this life other than just money. Like, you know, if you're out and people want to host you, like there's incentives behind that sort of thing. So if it was any more, I can see it becoming a stress, having security and driving in black cars because you don't want anybody knowing it's you. It's
the Taylor Swift black box theory.
Right. Yeah.
So, you know, with that being said, what's the weirdest fan that you've ever had? Or like the craziest, like do you have any like of those stories of like crazy, weird, I don't want to say stalker, but like, you know, those like just fans that like you a little too much, I'll say.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's mostly stuff online. Like nobody in person has ever been that weird to me or to us.
Thankfully.
Knock
on wood.
Yeah, for real, because they've always respected our family dynamic. And again, like that's where it gets dicey, right? If you're with your mom or obviously my dad's wife or my sisters, you don't know what a dude is going to say and what they want from us. And so everybody's always been very, very respectful of that. Online, people get really weird, you know what I mean? Whether they're talking shit or they ask for things from us that are just, you know, out of pocket. But it's been super manageable. I have no complaints over here.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
I'm happy for you in that sense.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
No problem. So let's transition. Work ethic. What are you doing in a day? Like, what's your daily routine looking like?
That's such a funny question because my friends are like, what the fuck do you do all day? And I was like, I don't know. Depends on the day. So, but it really does, man. I'm not a type of dude where I'm going to act like I'm something I'm not. There are plenty of people that are physically working way harder than I am, that are working in construction or landscape or 10-hour, 12-hour days. Like, that stuff is brutal. But I will say I'm always thinking about it, right? I'm always hyper-obsessive about, like, what can we be doing next or what do we have to be doing? So on an actual work day, I'll go home, I'll film with my dad however much we can. If we have spare time, then we'll go live or we'll have, like, quote-unquote meetings. We'll talk with our agency. We'll talk about different ideas or opportunities outside of just making TikTok. So whether that's merchandise or extended businesses or potential shows and things like that, answering emails, negotiating deals, things like that. So once you get into this crux, it's kind of just like a rinse and repeat process, thankfully, right? Like, so I would say the most annoying work would be like just reposting all this content. So like I was saying to you before, content really is king. Like just post as much as you possibly can. If you can post 5 times a day, do it. Like I'm serious. And even that is not like that crazy anymore. So if you're on 8 different platforms, you know, it gets time consuming and normally you have to job allocate that stuff to somebody else. But there's days where I don't do shit. There's days where I'm doing a lot. So it's a constant balance of allowing yourself to like live in that. And some people can't handle that. Some people need like a structure of I'm doing this today and I have to know what I'm doing tomorrow. Whereas thankfully, I kind of go with the flow anyway. So if I have an off day, I'm like, this is cool. And if I have a really, really busy day, I get most excited about that. Like I love having a lot of stuff to do. I think it locks you in. I don't think there's anything better than a mind at work that just nothing else to think about, but just be in the flow state of doing what you love to do. And I think the opposite is like the most dangerous place to be is the bored mind. You know, now you get to thinking about yourself introspectively. What am I doing wrong with my life? What could, you know, what could be worse about what's going on? So that's I always say, what do they say? Like the idle mind is the devil's playground or whatever.
Idle hands. Devil's plaything.
Right, exactly. Like you got nothing to do. You're gonna find something to do. And it's probably not gonna be good.
Right. Well, I mean, there's a meme I just saw. Do you know Sonic the Hedgehog?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's Shadow the Hedgehog in this picture, but it's like never trust your rule of thumb. Never trust your thoughts after 9 p.m. about your life.
I just heard. I think Chris Williamson had a sleep therapist on, and he was saying
Matt Walker.
Yeah, how at night before bed is like the worst time to try to sort your problems out, which is like the opposite of what we're always told. Like we're always told, before bed, think about the next day and talk through what went right and what went wrong about your day. But you start spiraling, right? When it's deep and dark and all you have to do is talk to yourself, things can get really, really dangerous if you don't have faith in God and you're just talking to nothing. It's a dangerous place to be.
If a man stares into the abyss stares back into him.
Yep. And it's a creepy place, man.
Yeah. And it's funny because that meme, there was somebody who retweeted it, and they put the caption, "This meme has probably genuinely saved lives."
Yeah,
it's
but it's real, man. That's
real.
Think about like even you wake up in a paranoia of you heard a sound and you start spiraling like what is that? It's 10 a.m. the next day. You're like, wait, why was I so worried about that sound? Like it was nothing. It was the wind.
It almost didn't even feel real.
It didn't feel real. You're like, wait, I was really over obsessing over that. You know what I mean? The mind is a crazy, crazy thing.
I think that's a human nature thing, though. Like, we're naturally afraid of the dark. Probably something to do with, like, survival. Like, naturally, you're more paranoid.
Your fight or flight mode kicks on crazy when it's dark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, we're talking about your daily routine, and we're talking about, like, what you do in a day.
Yeah.
And your work ethic. I did notice, and I said this to you when you walked in, the cauliflower ear.
I do.
And I also...
It's for people that can't see it.
Yeah.
Actually, wait, this is the better one.
And it's funny, because I was doing research, and I was like... I saw you were, at the time that the article or page is posted, a blue belt in jiu-jitsu, right? Now you're a purple belt.
Yeah, correct.
You also used to do football in high school.
Yep.
Did you ever do wrestling?
Yeah, I wrestled in high school, a little college.
Okay.
Yeah.
How good were you in wrestling?
So I started in high school, which is like rare. It's very hard. Bo was talking about on his podcast, to be a top one, and I'm talking about like a legit world level wrestler. If you're not starting at 5-6 years old, it's almost impossible to catch up to these guys because God-gifted talent or not, wrestling is one of those sports where hard work is ingrained in being great, but it's not just hard work for a day, it's hard work over time. And for me to catch up in 4 years to what dudes are doing for 10, 15 years,
right.
It's almost impossible. So I would say I was a good high school wrestler. I wasn't great. I was part of a really, really good team. So thankfully the guys around me were those great guys that were wrestling since fucking birth. And then wrestled a little bit in college under a really good coach. So I learned a lot more actually post high school than I did. At the time I was training jiu-jitsu since like 14 years old. So I was on and off a jiu-jitsu mat. But I would say now, these last 3 years, I've taken jiu-jitsu way more serious than ever.
Well, wrestling, when we're talking about jiu-jitsu and wrestling tends to be the sport that changes a lot of people mentally.
Yeah.
And physically too. But mentally especially, I feel like it teaches people the most out of any other martial art.
It teaches people, but it's also the mentally, I don't want to say weird or different. They gravitate towards this sport because you have to be
100%.
a bit of a psychopath to be a Division I wrestler. These guys are not normal human beings. You know what I mean? To be able to do what you're doing every single day and work really, really hard, but then take that and add in not being able to drink or eat food. That's the one difference with this sport than a lot of other football players. Train really hard.
They eat a lot.
They eat a lot of food, but what they do is like the biggest difference is, let's say for example, you're playing a Division I, you're on a Division I football team. You got your game on Saturday. Practice Monday, Tuesday is probably pretty hard, but then Wednesday, Thursday starts to slow down, and maybe Friday's a walkthrough, and then Saturday morning you're casual, you're prepping for the game, you play the game, Sunday you rest, and then Monday you're back at it. You're wrestling 3-4 times a week, first of all, so you're never getting that time off. You got plenty of guys that have to make weight the next day, so they're running off the mat of their match to go lose weight. You're never off, and for that, and then off season isn't really off. You got to keep your weight relatively in check for a lot of these guys, or stay relatively in shape. So I think that's the most grueling part of it, is the mental. Everybody knows how it feels to be fucking hungry. It's miserable. Yeah. So now trying to keep your clarity of learning a sport is nearly impossible, and these dudes do it.
You have to. It's one of those things where I think you do have to be wired differently. Like,
have to.
There's some sports where it's like you have to be wired a very, very, in games even, like wired a very, very particular way. And you got to practice every day, every night for 10 years. Like chess is one of those things.
Yeah.
Right. Chess is one of those things. Wrestling, to be the best, I mean, like there's some things where you can get pretty good just by natural talent, I think. Yeah. But there's other things, like you really have to be a special kind of person. Right. Like basketball, I think if you were to obsess over it enough, like you could do it. But like something like chess or wrestling, you have to be very, very specific, and like you have to train a very specific way, and you have to learn a very specific way. You have to think a very specific way, I think. And I've noticed that with people where there's just some guys that are like naturally animals at the sport.
Well, jiu-jitsu and wrestling differ in that where like wrestling is a bit more of a brute force sport, right? Like you learn and I'm saying to be like a great wrestler, not a superb or world champion. You learn 3 or 4 moves, and you work those moves really, really hard in high school and college, and you could be very successful. You learn a takedown, you learn a pinning combination, and you learn how to stay off your back. You'll be okay. Whereas jiu-jitsu, you notice a lot of these guys now are like nerds, right? Because they're taking their...
Mark Zuckerberg.
Right. They're analytical as hell, and they're taking it as a process. Just like chess, it's not move A and then success. It's move A combated by his move A, and now I'm doing move B to then C and D and E. And I know my move E is what's going to work, but I still have to go through steps 1 through 4 to get there. And to be able to think like that also while performing the act is very, very difficult, especially for a lot of these wrestlers where they're used to just, I'm going to fucking take this kid down and bury him into the ground. That oftentimes doesn't work because this guy knew and was preparing for just that. And now, okay, what do I do from here?
Right. Wrestling is one of those things that you can absolutely get through with just raw strength.
A lot of time. I mean, especially as the weight gets heavier, right? Like, so you'll notice technique typically is best in like the middleweights because the lightweights can be really, really fast.
Very fast.
Right? They're very, very quick and fast. Whereas the middleweights has to be a combination. You can't just be fast, or you got to be strong now too, and you got to be very technical. Beginning of the heavier weights, these dudes are fucking bears. You know what I mean? I mean, you look at like a Gable Stevenson, and his technique is superb. But a lot of these guys are just able to, like you said, brute force somebody around and become, decently successful.
Have you ever heard of the guy named The Experiment?
No.
So he was actually nicknamed the Bear. So it's funny when you're talking about.
Oh, the Russian wrestler?
Yes.
Yeah.
He's actually now a politician.
Yeah.
So I looked up yesterday. I don't know why. And it wasn't even anything to do with this, but I was actually looking up about it. And like this guy, he only had 2 losses ever, and that was his first and his last match ever. They were losses, but then everything else, he had like 800, like some ridiculous number, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of wins. Right? If you see a picture of this guy, like he looks like he would take your head off.
Yeah.
He's like unbelievable. Right? And some of these guys, you wrestle them, it's like you're wrestling Superman. Right? When you meet like a really good wrestler and you're like new to wrestling or not that good, like I did wrestling, I was not that good. Right? Some of these guys, they feel like you're wrestling Superman. Right? Other people, it's like you wrestle them and it's like, okay, this guy I can,
he's not a human. Yeah.
Yeah. This guy's just on my level. Other people, it's like you wrestle them. It's like, what's this guy hitting me with? You know? It's like you're fighting Mike Tyson without punching.
There's plenty of moments in jiu-jitsu, especially where I'm in the fight, and the worst part about jiu-jitsu is like you tap and it's not over. You got to keep going against this dude. So you're in the swamp of it, and you're like, this guy is ragdolling me. Like I am a child, and this guy is doing whatever he wants to me, and it becomes extremely debilitating. Where you're like, if you were on the street right now or wherever, this guy could take your life if he really, really wanted to. There's nothing you could do about it. Thankfully, you're on a mat and you tap out when he stops. But if you didn't, he could do whatever he wanted to, and it's fucking scary.
Yeah, or if there's nobody around.
Or if nobody around, yeah, exactly. So
yeah, no, I've definitely met people like that. There was, I had one especially experience where I knew a kid like that. It's really incredible. But some people are like just built, especially like because my own experience is wrestling. I don't really know jiu-jitsu that much. But it's really incredible to see some of those people.
Well, the beauty of the sport is that you are always, and I don't care how good you are always or have been both of those at the same time, right? Like you are the person that to somebody else you could do whatever you wanted to that human being, and then you're also at the exact same time, could be the exact same day, getting thrown around and then taking advantage of. So it's like this constant confidence boost, yet most humbling experience of your life. And I think that's what life should be more about, is understanding that you walk around with a humble confidence versus one or the other.
Yeah. Do you ever watch Dragon Ball Z?
I tried to get into anime at my later ages, like a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And Dragon Ball Z, I used to watch when I was young.
That's a good show.
It was a great show. It was hard for me to get back into because now I'm older and I'm like, all right, I got to sit through.
It's not the same.
It doesn't hit the same. Naruto is fucking long and
Naruto's
drags.
fair.
And I'm like, I'm trying to get through it. And everybody always says, oh, season 1. And once you get through season 1, you'll be okay. And I did. I watched Demon Slayer. That was a good one. That's the one where the girl had the thing in her mouth.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
So
I know Demon Slayer, yeah.
That was a good one because it was like off the rip. It was action. And I was like, okay, this I can get into.
So what a lot of people need, yeah.
Yeah, it's like they're storytelling, and I get that, but they're fucking long seasons, and there's 30 seasons, you know? Who's got time for it?
Yeah, I mean, like, if I was going to talk about good animes, Death Note's a good one.
So Death Note, I watched 3 episodes, and same thing. I was like, okay. But as soon as the episode 1 started, you understood the plot. You're like, okay, here's the note. Here's what this guy has capabilities of doing. Let's see what he does with this godlike power, and who's going to stop him. How do they stop him? So you're already intrigued.
Very.
Because you're like, there's no way anybody's going to stop this guy.
Yeah.
And then they're like, wait, somebody can, you know?
Yeah. Or at least can, like, generalize, a solution. It's a really interesting show.
It is.
I think also, and it's like a funny way of thinking about it, but like I think people like shows that they can envision themselves in.
Right, and Death Note is one of those shows.
Yeah, where it's like, well, what if I had the Death Note?
Yeah. Or you're the other guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or what if somebody does have the Death Note and we just don't know about it yet?
Yeah. Well, no, we would know. I think I would
You would
assume. I would assume that we know.
It's only God has the Death Note.
Yeah. Well, that's the real Death Note.
Exactly.
Yeah. No. So Dragon Ball Z. No, because you were talking about like humble confidence.
Yeah.
No, that reminded me of Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah.
You ever play Sparking Zero? That's
No.
a new game that came out.
No, never played.
Good.
What's it about?
It's just the Dragon Ball game that came out.
Oh, I used to play the old Dragon Ball Z game.
Budokai?
Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah.
I forget there's one scene where I forget who it was, but he kind of gave up and he says something like there's a moment in battle you admitted your defeat, right? And surrender is far worse than defeat. And for me, it's like that's
Vegeta?
Yeah.
It's Vegeta, yeah.
It's surrender is far worse than defeat. And that, like, as a man or a woman, I can't speak for a woman because I'm not one.
Yeah.
But as a man, like, try really, really hard and never be afraid to fail because you're way better off failing than just accepting your own defeat and not really, really trying.
Well, people recently, I mean, as you get older, I think, when it comes to Dragon Ball Z, because that's one of those shows I feel like your whole life you could appreciate.
Yeah.
At least I did, because I grew up with Dragon. That's crazy that we both grew up with Dragon Ball Z, and we're both like.
Well, you didn't. You just happened to watch it when it was already over.
No, well, so it's funny you say that because Dragon Ball Super then came out too.
Oh, it did. Wow. So it was still going on when you were a kid.
Yeah. So there was the original Dragon. You probably grew up with the original Dragon Ball.
Yeah.
And then Dragon Ball Z probably ended in like when I was first born, but they were playing like reruns of it.
Sure.
Because it's a popular show.
Mm-hmm.
And then GT came out, which was very early 2000s, 90s, and then
that's probably when I was. I mean, I was born in '95, so
Yeah.
I was 10 years old in 2005. That's when I probably started watching and acting like the Dragon Ball Z and Kamehamehaing everybody around me and shit like that.
Yeah, and then I remember. So then Super came out in like 2015. It's already 10 years old, which was really crazy. But yeah, no, it's one of those shows that I feel like people, or at least I did, I really appreciated it when I was like growing up watching it, and like now still to this day I'm like, wow, like I'm still seeing edits and clips of the show, and I'm playing the video game still.
Right.
And there's been also multiple games too, which is also how I maintained interest in it. It's always been one of those things where I feel like it's transcended time.
It has. It's fictional, but there's real life lessons. Obviously you're not Goku, and you're not gonna turn Super Saiyan one day. But again, like the lesson we refer to, you can pull from that, and I think everybody you kind of fall into this trap of society where like, who are you kidding? Normalize yourself and be more real. Whereas like it's okay to be a kid once in a while and act in these ways and pretend to be somebody you're not, because who knows, you may end up in and form yourself into a different person if you just fucking pretend once in a while.
Right. Well, that's the whole point of Goku's journey. It's like,
Right.
He's actually, I think this is arguably like one of the most important parts of Goku's journey is, I remember, is it like the tournament and like the original Dragon Ball. I don't know if you remember this, but Roshi. Do you know who wrote? Like, I want to wish. I don't know if I'm like speaking Spanish. Like,
No, yeah.
No, so like Roshi dressed up as Jackie Chan and beat him.
Yeah.
Right. And because Goku was kicking everybody's ass because he's an alien,
Mm-hmm.
so he's beating everybody. And then the reason that Roshi beat him in the tournament was just to prove a point and say, listen, you're not going to win every battle.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Even the best fall,
Yeah.
And that's a lesson they go have to learn.
Yeah. And I don't know. There's just, like, there's so many good lessons of
There
like
is.
motivation. It's why a lot of people get into working out, I think.
Yeah. Well, working out is the easiest or not easiest, the most simplified way to really understand trust the process, because like it is a direct, I don't care what your genetics look like. I'm not saying you're going to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger, but if you eat right and you go to the gym and you work hard, you will over time look better than you once did. You will lose weight if that's your goal. You will build muscle if that's your goal. It may not be to your standards, but if you take a step back and truly realize, wait, if I apply myself to something, I don't care how bad you are when you start, you will be better when you finish. Like that's pretty much, in short, everything about life.
Right. Yeah. Most people need to learn that they are capable of success.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people fail because, not initially because they never tried, but because they have tried and they failed the first time, and it's like, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's a very underrated reason why people tend to not try. It's just because they try once and it's like, what's the point? I failed.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm at an age now where it's hard to get somebody out of their everyday grind, right? Like if you're a 9-to-5er, and I have no disrespect towards anybody that's doing what they love to do, but if you're working a job you just don't like and you're kind of content because you have to be, it's very, very difficult. I don't care how much ambition you have to say, I'm going to quit today and go take a leap of faith and try something that I don't know if it's going to fucking work in 6 months, right? Like you could definitely do it, but it takes more than I think yourself. It takes a support group of people that have done it around you. And then not only that, but like support you through those early stages. Because for me, like, I believe in luck for sure, right? Like we were blessed and got lucky in the beginning, right? Like if that didn't happen to us, we probably wouldn't have tried to go viral. It just kind of found us and then we kept it moving. But for me, like people are always asking like, hey, how should I start? And I understand the process now. But for me to be like, oh, take after what I did, it's not fair for me to say that. So I would support somebody in their journey, but I also understand how hard it would be for them to say, hey, I'm going to stop working and then I'm going to go do what you do. I think it has to be this blend of trying something out, blasé here and there, catching an inkling of hope, and then letting that hope spark and sprout into something bigger.
Right. I just because I think a lot of people tend to not want to try either because, like, the early stages are always the most difficult. The boundary of entry for a lot of things is very difficult.
Yeah.
Especially it's like if you never worked out before, like working out for the first time, that could be very difficult.
Well, the biggest issue is, especially now, is your expectation versus reality of what something is going to feel like, right? So you watch a motivational video of Dorian Yates lifting weights, and I don't care who you are, you're gonna watch that and say, I want to start lifting weights now. But guess what? You get into the gym and lifting weights is not going to feel nearly as good as watching him lift weights. And so you get into the gym and the disparity between what is and what you expected is so different that you're like, fuck this, I'm not doing this anymore. I'd rather go watch him lift weights. That felt way better. And so that's what happens a lot with people trying to start something new is they see the end result and they're like, oh yeah, that looks great. But they didn't watch the guy for the first 10 years and where he got or how he got there.
Right.
So it's an issue where take enough motivation to get you started and then stop with watching people live the life you want to live, because that's a dangerous game too. You're fulfilling yourself enough. You got the dopamine hit by watching somebody else do it. You don't need to go and do it. You're kind of good, and then it's drained when you go to try to do it yourself. So you gotta like let yourself feel these mini victories instead of watching somebody else go win their own life.
Right. Okay. So well, with that being said, when we're talking about like natural talent, I think that's something I do want to talk about. Like, you, as a kid, did play football, right? We spoke about that, and you did do wrestling. You seem like you were a pretty active kid. Was it like always just ingrained in you to like work out? Was it a natural part of you, or did you have to like really push yourself to go do those things?
Yeah, I mean, I was naturally, I would say, a pretty insecure, anxious kid, right? I was never like the top talent of any of the teams until I got to like high school football. But other than that, like my dad was, an athlete growing up, and I knew I liked and loved being part of teams and things like that. But it was always hard for me to believe myself, and as you're a kid, you watch these kids and you're like, why are they so much more confident than I am? and they must have something I just will never have, right? You don't really have a concept of what hard work actually results in when you're fucking 12 years old. So for me, I was kind of just like going through the motions. I definitely tried quitting a couple times, and thankfully my parents kept me in it. But yeah, I think that once you do feel that feeling of satisfaction of, wait, I actually got good at something, it becomes your love. So like football for me, I started playing when I was really, really young, but was never great. And then football in high school, I was starting as a junior on varsity or whatever. And you look back, you're like, those are some of your best moments, right? Because now you're good, you're known by the people that are around you, you're having a lot of fun playing this sport. And it's one of the only moments in your life where you could really focus on just one thing, right? Like even as an adult, yes, I have this one thing going, but now you have adult real problems, right? Like
Bills.
those bills and family stuff and whatever it is, right? When you're a kid, 17, 18 years old, all I had to do was think about football all day. And it was amazing. Like it was football, my friends, and maybe my girlfriend at the time. That was it. And life was very, very good. And it was pure. And I'm not the type of guy to like live in high school. Like I appreciate it for what it
Thankfully.
was. Yeah, right. Imagine I was still talking about like, oh, if I didn't break my leg, I'd be.
Well, that's the
I'd be
classic.
in the NFL right now.
Yeah.
No, yeah. But I mean, there's plenty of people that do engrave themselves in to one thing, and it's very hard to let go of. But sports for me, I guess it taught me competitiveness. I think that's something that more men need to be in touch with, is their ability to compete and their desire to. You should want to compete against somebody, right? Like I make TikToks for a living. I'm not going out there saying I want to rip somebody's head off that makes TikToks against me, but it is great to see somebody that's also doing this, say, yo, I can appreciate that, but you know what? Like, all right, let's step up our shit, right? There's so much more we can be doing. Whereas if I didn't have that competitive edge, I wouldn't even give a shit, And I think my friend, funny enough, a couple years ago when I was like getting back into jiu-jitsu, he was asking me the question. He's like, all right, well, did you lose your competitive edge yet? And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, well, when you get older, you just stop caring about certain things. And I'm like, you're right. Like I hop on a mat and I was accepting defeat way too early, where it's like resilience and relentlessness. I mean, that is the most important thing if you want to be good at a sport like jiu-jitsu. Just not giving up a position or not stopping until you get the pass, you get the submission, whatever it may be. And you will lose that feeling if you don't work on it. So now I'm climbing this uphill battle of getting that competitiveness back, because I know it correlates really well to life, right? You want to be a hyper-competitive person, because I think that's where happiness and peace and excitement really comes from, is like, let me compete really hard in something. Win or lose doesn't necessarily matter, but it's like I tried really hard and I found peace in the process versus just like going through the motions.
Winning isn't everything, but wanting to win is.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's a quote I heard, and it still sticks with me. Where it's
I like that one.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Like in your everyday life, what does competition look like to you?
Yeah. I mean, great question. Definitely, jiu-jitsu. Like I'm pretty competitive, so it's hard for me to have like an egoless round, and it's something that I'm really working on, is humbly accepting, like, oh, I'm just gonna go easy today, and I'm gonna work on this, and it's okay if I get tapped out a couple times. I like winning, and so sometimes that gets in the way, but I do enjoy that process of going at somebody that just kicked my ass, or vice versa. I felt really good on the mats that day, because then that then translates over into what's next for Johnny Drinks and the podcast. Because the analogy I always give is, if you want to make a business out of making content, it's like this gigantic Easter egg hunt, right? Like there's Easter eggs everywhere. That could be money, it could be more followers or different business opportunities, but you don't know these Easter eggs exist until you go out and try to find them, So for us, it's like, if you don't keep yourself on that edge, like I said, you can kind of go through the motions and be like, all right, well, a whole week went by and nothing really changed and I'm okay right now. I stayed afloat. Or you can start thinking to yourself, okay, these people are doing extraordinary things. And instead of getting jealous, it's like, use that as motivation to be like, okay, what could we be doing that's a little bit better or a little more exciting than what we're doing today?
How do you think you raise kids to have that kind of mindset, to want to compete?
How do I hold? I'm not a father. If I were to raise my sons, and I heard this on a podcast too, is you never want to like over obsess over telling your kids they're really good at something, right? Because even if they are good, they're now rooted in this natural born talent, and when they get smacked in the face with the other kids that are really good
or obsessed,
they may not have learned to work really hard. So I probably will like engrave in them, you're a really hard worker. I don't care how hard it gets, you just work really, really hard. And I want them to feel the excitement of winning. I think that's really important, but also the shitty feeling of losing. Like everybody should go through when you're a kid crying because you lost a match or a fight or a game, whatever that is. Like, allow yourself to get there. Don't tell yourself it's okay. It's not okay. You lost because of these reasons. Let's get better for the next time. But I also would help them through that it's not the end of the world. Like, you're not a loser now, right? Like, let's not lose your ability to now compete again, because I think that's a slippery slope too, is if you berate them into thinking they're worthless, now they're not going to want to do anything.
Right. Well, so there was a show that used to exist, and you just reminded me of this. It was called Child Genius, right? And what they would do is that they would take kids with like abnormally high intelligence, like I don't know how they get those kids. I assume that you could apply. I don't know. I would actually like to really know how they did that, because that's like such a drop in the bucket.
Yeah.
But they would take those kids, and there was one family. It was this first season. I forget if it was the first or second season of the show. There's only ever 2 seasons of the show. But it was this Asian family, and they were raising their daughter. Like, and all these kids are like, their parents are like helicopter parents. They're always like, oh, all right, now to karate, now to Latin, now he's not even in school. Now he's in college.
Yeah.
Anyways, with that being said, though, this family, they said something that really, really like frustrated me. She was like in second place. She didn't win the competition, because if you win the competition, you get like a full ride or whatever to college. But this girl, her family, like they said, like, oh, we never tell her that she's smart, because the second that we tell her that she's smart or good at it, like that's it. She'll just never study again. Yeah. And I'm like, what? Like you're never gonna tell your child that she has like natural intelligence, right? And she's like clear, like she like metrically has it, like she has like the IQ test. I'm like, you're never gonna tell your daughter ever that because you're so afraid that she's gonna become lazy from that. Like, I don't know, like that's a backwards mindset to me, to where you're never gonna tell your kid that they're good at something.
I think it's a balance, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like, even if it's like parental balance, where like maybe the dad is a little harder and the mom is a bit softer, or vice versa, right? Like your mom's never, or it's never good enough for your dad, but your mom is always there to tell you she loves you and all these different things. And so, but I do think that there is going to be a breaking point where your son is fine. If you're going to be that parent to be like, dude, you know what? Fuck you. Like, I'm done trying to appeal and appease you. I'm going to go do what I want to do. And your dad's probably going to be like, oh, wait, like, I love you regardless. Yeah. He just didn't express it properly. And I think I'll make sure that my kids know that I'm just proud of them for working really, really hard. I don't care what the result was. And honestly, like, the tournament night or game night or whatever, that's the fun part. Like, that's where you let go. Like, all this work you're not working that night. The work is done. It's time to show off how hard you worked. So you should go in with a sense of peace to be like, I'm going to give this up and just allow myself to have fun and enjoy this. And whatever the result is, the result is.
Right. Well, like I said, I mean, like, my stance is basically yours. It's, there should be a balance. I don't personally believe in the idea that you should never tell your kid that you're doing a good job. Like, when I heard that, and I still think about, like, I just thought about it now. I'm like, what? Like, never? Like, you'll never ever say to your daughter, good job? Like, because you're so afraid. Because what you're saying, eventually that daughter's going to hate her parents.
Yeah. There's so much more to life than
winning.
Finding success and winning. Like, I want my son and my daughter to love me. You know what I mean? If they feel comfort in talking to me, that's a win for me. Right? Like, so what is success if it's just money? It's not much success. Making money, not it's easy, but it's very doable, especially if you're willing to step on toes of other people and be a dickhead and not think about how that's going to make somebody else feel.
Like Steve Jobs.
Right. I mean, yeah. I mean, but you take a guy like that, and it's almost at his level of success, he needed that. Right. He needed to be perceivably a dickhead to somebody else.
Right. Well, I mean, it's just not sustainable for most people. For most people right. There's more to life than just, what am I going to do next? Like, what's the next big project? Yeah. Like, being a Mr. Beast or being a Steve Jobs or being a Bill Gates is not or I don't know how Bill Gates works, but, I know about those two, and it's not a sustainable way to live. Right. I wouldn't want to, if you told me, George, you could switch places with Mr. Beast right now, I wouldn't.
You're not him. Like, he doesn't that's just how he's wired. You know, I think that's what people don't understand. They don't grasp that concept of like, you really can't just like work yourself into a lot of these positions. They are wired differently, right? Like they are hyper obsessed with what they do. Sometimes they're on the spectrum, you know what I mean? They just don't think the way the average brain may think, and that's okay. Everybody's different. But like to say, oh, I want to be in those guys' shoes. No, you don't, because you don't do what those guys want to do.
You're just not them.
Right. You just don't. Yeah. You're just not them. And you should accept. I mean, growing up, I think you really, the quicker you become self-aware, the better. Once you realize like, hey, this is the life I want to live, but this is what I'm willing to do to get there, and then find that balance of where it makes sense, that's what you then go and do. And yeah, you should push yourself. If every night you're up and you're saying, I'm not doing enough, well then yeah, maybe you're not doing enough. But also, maybe that's just who you are as a person, and you have to give yourself a little more grace. Because if you're trying really hard and it's still not good enough for you, then maybe it's not the hard work that's the problem. Maybe it's the conversation you're having with yourself.
You ever have to face burnout?
Definitely not with this. I mean, this is not. I had burnout with the tech startup because it's, again, I was banging my head against a wall hoping something would work. And it's like, it's so frustrating hearing the word no over and over again. There's nothing to burn out. I mean, again, and I can't speak for anybody else, but like the creators are like, I just need a week off of mental. I'm like, dude, you fucking make a TikTok, man. Like that's how hard and stressful your life is, that you need to take a break mentally because you're tired of the comments you're getting that people are saying to you. Like, get over yourself for a little bit. This is compared it to work. This is my job for the day. You know, suck it up and go to work. And my dad and I won't get burnt out, but we'll definitely have times where maybe a shoot day isn't ideal and we argue and we'll take a breather in 5 minutes and we'll go right back to filming again a TikTok. Like, let's put life in perspective a bit.
Right. I mean, I guess most people don't really understand. Like, it's one of those things where you don't really know what you have.
Yeah, and also I don't overthink a lot of things. Like, I think a lot of people are hyper thinkers. So like they'll have this idea, this grandiose idea, but then they'll take days upon days upon days to overthink, and this is the perfect time, and this is how I have to implement it, and they whiteboard it. Whereas I was made for this like short form style because I'm like, oh, idea, let's film it, let's post it. And I think if you study the people that are successful, most of them, the time between ideation and implementation is very, very small. They have an idea, they go and do it. Because what happens when you're up at night and you have this great idea and you're really hyped up about it, the next day, inevitably, you're not going to feel as passionate about that idea, right? The words of "who are you kidding" start creeping in, and reality checks in, and you're like, oh, I have something to do today, and I'm going to forget about that. And the week goes by, like, that idea was stupid anyway. Or maybe somebody else got in your ear and was like, you can't do that. If you just went and did it, you probably would have been way better off than not doing it at all.
Ideas are an interesting creature. If you don't capture it in a bottle immediately, they're going to disappear. And if you don't act on them, they're going to stay in that bottle forever.
Yeah, I think that's where like holding yourself accountable. I think social media is great to do that, right? Like if you want to go on a journey, or let's say you want to run a marathon, maybe you told yourself that, and then in a week you're like, fuck this, I'm not running a marathon. You're going to stop doing that, right? But if you set yourself up on social to be like, hey guys, come with me and follow my journey on running a marathon. I'm going to run a mile today and see how that goes. And now you have support from other people, and now people are checking in on you. Now you're only letting, you're not just letting yourself down, you're letting other people down. I think a lot of humans have a hard time just caring about what they think about themselves. Some people can do it, but other people need that support from the outside world.
Right. Well, I mean, again, it goes back to like self-doubt, I guess. Yeah. You know, a lot of people doubt themselves. A lot of people fail because a lot of people have never tried.
Yeah.
I think that's another one, is that a lot of, like, in my experience, which is, you know, only 18 years, but, you know, in that experience, I think having met people that have like a naturally defeatist mindset, their biggest flaw is that they try once, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, is that they try once. It's not they never tried. It's that they have tried, but there was just something wrong. Maybe it was too hard and they've never done it before, and it felt like, you know, putting your hand on the stove, right? Yeah. You know, it hurts, right? But eventually your hand goes numb. Right? I
also think like people don't have a practical grasp on like what success looks like, right? So maybe they found success, but in their eyes it's not good enough, and they're never happy. So like, why am I even trying? And it's like, if you had a different mindset and you saw that as, wait, I am heading in the right direction, just keep moving, you'd be way better off. So it's like, you never lose. You just end up quitting and stopping and trying something new, unless you're like really, you know, dead ass broke and cannot keep doing and sustaining this lifestyle or whatever you're trying to do, then yeah, maybe you try something new, or like you're just not made out for it. You know what I mean? I think that's where like very self-aware, how important it is to be self-aware. A lot of people think they want to be content creators, and you stick a camera in their face and they're like, you don't want this. Like, well, I'm not saying like you're worse or better than anybody, but like if you don't want to do this, then stop telling yourself you want to do this. If you wanted to do this, you'd be doing it for free and for 10 views. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's where you notice, and I always say, like, I'm nothing special. Like, we fucking film ourselves making drinks.
Right.
But for whatever reason, we have this natural aura about us that you want to watch our videos, right? It's the dad that looks like he's this Renaissance man, and he's dressed nice, and he perceivably knows how to do everything. That makes a lot of sense. Whereas, like, if you look at any of the top creators, most of them have that one thing about them where you're just addicted to watching their content, right? You don't really know, you can't pinpoint what that thing is sometimes.
Casey Neistat.
Right, yeah, like Casey Neistat looks like the most average human being ever. Respectfully, probably less than average looking, but whatever. And wears those goofy broken glasses, but for him it's like that's his shtick, and he's just so good at being authentically himself, and he makes phenomenal content. But even his content, like it's not like it's the best edits in the world. It's not like he's using the highest quality cameras. It's his ability to storytell through the lens of his life.
Very slice of life.
Yes, exactly. And he's so good at that and over time it worked. It wasn't day one, and he loved doing it every single day. I would assume overall he loved the process, and that's why he is where he is today.
All right. Well, now he doesn't make videos anymore.
That's what I'm saying, but he doesn't have to anymore. You know what I mean? Like where he is today is where he wants to be. He's done it. He can now be a testimony for hard work. He could be a consultant to other creators. I'm sure he loves watching other creators create. Like, he loves that process, but he doesn't have to be the fucking young kid running around with a camera and gunning things out, you know?
Right. So, so let me ask you this. Is this your job? Like, is this the only thing that you're doing?
Yeah. We retired my dad like 2 years ago. So I was I had a tech startup out of college and was doing that, doing odd jobs here and there. I was caddying and driving people around or whatever. I would do anything I could do except for work to make money. Like, I just not want to be tied down to a 9 to 5, and I would literally, for the same amount of pay, do everything else but that, right? I'd help people move their furniture and whatever it was. So I had that going to just like supplement the app, and I was raising money at the time. So it was like perfect timing where we were still running the app, because it was like, hey, let me drive traffic using the TikTok to the app. And we were like a top 100 app on the App Store at one point. And there was a moment where I realized how special this was, and it was like this so different in the success was so natural and easy here, where this was still so like up and down, back and forth. And it really came down to like my passion. I was in ed tech, so like education technology. Nobody fucking loves ed tech. I had no passion for what I was doing. I had a passion for building something that just happened to be the thing that I was doing at the time. So I had to make the decision myself and to my dad, like, hey, I'm over this. Like, let's double down here. And so within 6 months, we were making money doing the TikToks. It wasn't, retirement money, but I was home and we were doing nothing in quarantine anyway. So as soon as I remember justifying it, like, okay, my friends are post-college, maybe making $50,000 a year at their like base level job. If I can clear that doing this TikTok thing, then okay, great. Like, that supplements, and now I'm working a job. And then I was doing that, and I was like, okay, great. But then I always knew in the back of my head, like, respectfully, I'm not going to compare myself to everybody else. I want a lot more for myself and for my dad. To be able to say I'm doing this with him is phenomenal, and for him is phenomenal. And so that's where it really started to explode and take off, is like, the possibilities are endless. And you start reading about, wait, these creators make how much money? Or this person did this? Like, oh my God, I am not even at the surface of where I can be.
Do you know who Jack Rysider is? Darknet Diaries.
No.
So,
who is it?
Darknet Diaries. It's a podcast.
Diaries,
no, it's like a hacker podcast. It's like the biggest hacker podcast too. But I don't know why he has this public, but his Patreon, the monthly, how much he makes on Patreon is public.
That's awesome.
And I see it. It's like $13,000 a month. I mean, you can check it out yourself on his Patreon. Not trying to shout out his Patreon, though. If you want to, sure. He is a friend of mine. So like I did the show with him. I recorded an episode, and I was like, I checked out his Patreon, and I didn't even know this was possible. But I checked out the numbers, like how many members he has or whatever, and it's like the first thing you see, it's like $13,000 a month. I'm like, why does he have this public? But regardless, I mean, like, I also then like got into a thing of like calculating how much creators are making.
Yeah, people love that game. Well, I remember there was a TikTok where like TikTok was getting banned. Maybe it was Leo. I think it was Leo Skeppy. He was like, you know what? Fuck it. I want to hear everybody else's biggest brand deal. I'm gonna say mine. Mine is whatever. Forget what it was, like maybe 30 grand. He's like, that was mine. You guys comment below. And then he had all these big time creators commenting what their highest number post was, and the comments are great. It's like a really funny because people are like, screw it, I'm gonna just tell everybody. And the transparency I think is important, but you also don't want like people knowing your business. It could ruin, and it depends on who the creator is, right? But like if you knew one of your favorite creators is making money off of you, you sometimes feel like you're getting duped. Other times like it's so obvious, right? You know Logan Paul and Jake Paul are making a ton of fucking money doing what they're doing.
Now just because of fighting, not even just
now just everything they do, they're making a fuck ton. But like our Alex Earl, right? You're not gonna stop watching Alex Earl because she's making all this money, but you never know who is now or how you approach it. Like, yeah, I just cleared that this month, and I'm gonna be a dickhead about it. Now you're gonna lose that community you kind of built.
I think there was like a recording or what of like a Keemstar on a stream where he's like, I don't know if he was joking, I don't know if he was serious, but he's like, I don't care about my fans, I just do it for the money, you know, like,
yeah.
And I don't know if he was joking, I don't really care either. I mean, it's Keemstar, but you know, I don't know. I feel like if people did know like which creators were in it for money, which ones like just really liked it, it would definitely change a lot of people's perspectives, and a lot of people would lose a lot of fans.
It just shouldn't though. Like it's like, do you get mad when your favorite actor makes a lot of money? Do you get mad when your favorite football player makes a lot of money? No, they're doing a job, but they're also entertaining you. I think it really matters. Like, so if you're a 21-year-old kid and you're grinding really hard and you landed your first big brand deal, like I'd be very excited for that person.
Happy. Yeah.
And I would hope that nobody would be like, oh, what a sellout. And like we get that all the time when we run ads. Like these guys are sellouts. I think the difference is that like my dad was already well off. He already worked his ass off and made a lot of money throughout his life.
Real estate, right?
He was in mortgage finance.
Yeah.
So he has it, right? And now I'm 29 years old. Us talking about and bragging about our money, that would sit the wrong way, and it's something I would never do. I would only talk about it from like an educational, you know, like, hey, this is what you can be doing, right? I'm not bragging about it, but like if you wanted to make a business out of this, here's what I would probably go and do day one, you know?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I remember my neighbor was talking to me about this because my neighbor met Rainn Williams, who is Dwight Schrute on The Office.
Mm-hmm.
And we were just he was talking to me about like YouTube, and we're talking about like meeting people and stuff. Anyway, so I spoke to him. He's no longer my neighbor, by the way. He actually recently moved, but he was talking about, he's like, what do YouTubers consider themselves in relation to other YouTubers? Like if they collab, are they business partners or are they just friends? Right. And I'm like, that's an interesting question because most people don't really think about that. And I'm like, my answer was, it really depends, because like there's a lot of people that I just consider myself friends with because I don't pay any of my guests. Right. So for me, it's not really necessarily a business venture or business partnership. However, it can be, you know, depending on if I ask them like, hey, you know, can I have this guest on, or like, you know, can I talk to this guy, or like, could you introduce me? Like, then that's a little bit businessy, but like I consider that more of like a friendly interaction than like, you know, I'm paying you $25,000 to come on my podcast. You know, Caitlyn Jenner's publicist said to me, this was actually a funny story. I emailed her publicist and I spoke to her. I spoke to her publicist and I was like, hey, you know, I want to have Caitlyn Jenner on, just shot in the dark. And she's like, oh yeah, sure, she's down, but you got to pay $15,000 for 30 minutes. For 30 minutes.
So ridiculous, man. I would never take money to be on somebody's fucking podcast. So first of all, I know.
At least not that much money.
I'm not taking anybody. Honestly, like I know how hard it is to build a podcast, and I'm so grateful for. I mean, Dana White was on our episode 6. Like, I'm gonna charge money to be on a podcast. Like, that's ridiculous. Right. So for me, I think it's like you have to go through the process of building and grinding through to then want to give back. Like, I love when people reach out and want to, you know, like you reaching out to me and asking me to be on the podcast. I'm not gonna snuff that, be like, oh, I don't even know. I don't have to. First of all, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And it's a good time. Like, I'm having a conversation with somebody. So I think when you talk about like collaborations, is it business, is it not? Yeah, I mean, listen, at the end of the day, I know you want to collaborate with me because of my views and my followers and vice versa. So like, I don't see anything wrong with it. Right. I think you end up building relationships. Like I have I have a couple friends that are in the space that I'd rather be with than others. But there's plenty of guys or girls that I would post with one time and probably never talk to them again.
100%.
I don't think there's a problem with that. You're giving your fans and their fans what they want.
Yeah, there's some people that I've learned like I have a very, very positive like experience with them, and I'm like, this person is like a good person to talk to. Other people I've met, I'm like, yeah, this person wasn't really all that, you know.
Right.
Of course, I'm not going to say who those people are, but you know, I definitely had the experience, and I'm sure you have. And actually, I do want to know about this, but like, you know, I've definitely had the experience of, you know, where you meet somebody and it's like, this person really wasn't that impressive, right? I've had that plenty of times. What was that like for you, if you've ever had those? You don't have to name names.
Yeah. Honestly, less about like this. I don't have any expectations when I talk to anybody. There's some celebrities that were very performative that were just like shaking my hand and like thought they were blessing me with their presence. Like, dude, I don't fucking respectfully care who you are. You know what I mean? Like, it's not
like A-list or like
on not even that. Like again, I've met plenty of people that are extremely notable and they treat you like a human. And, like, that's how it should be.
Dana.
Yeah, dude, Dana was the most humble, and he really taught me. When I walked out of that... You want to pause?
No, you hit an hour. I just wanted to let
Okay, yeah, we're going to wrap it up.
Yeah, you hit like an hour of 10, just to let you know.
Okay, but we're still recording?
Too long. What?
We're still recording? Or?
Yeah, you're still recording. I didn't want to cut it in. My bad.
Okay, yeah. No, so yeah.
Just, you got someone else coming in?
He's just my producer. Sorry to cut off the
show.
No,
okay, yeah. So I'll wrap up there and then we'll answer. So so like a Dana White was the most humbled guy with. I mean, listen, he's worth $500 million, and he taught me you should allow people around you to enjoy your success with you. Like, I walked into his office and I was like, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen, and he was like, I know, right? Like, he appreciated it so much. He wasn't bragging about it, but he also wasn't hiding it from me.
One of the bros.
He's just like, that's how I want great for myself. I want great for the people that are around me. I want to be able to share that with everybody so that when you win, I win, and vice versa. I never want anybody to feel like he's bragging, but I'm also not going to be like, oh, I'm going to hide it from you because you're not good enough.
Right. Yeah. Well, we do have to wrap up, unfortunately. I wish we could continue. Things were getting very interesting.
That's all right. I can come back.
Yeah, no. The last question I'm going to ask you, any advice for young people?
Young people in general or young people trying to make content?
Young people in general.
Young people in general. Again, become self-aware as soon as possible. Don't let other people get to you. Stay off social media. I know it's an ironic thing for me to say, but don't get too consumed by what is not real. And find people that bring out the best version of you and hang out with them as much as you can.
Great place to end off. All right. 3, 2, 1.
Out of here.